What's going on, YouTube? I'm AJ. This is my gun review. Today we're going to be covering one that I've been wanting to get in for the channel for a while now. This example from Masterpiece Arms. This particular gun is set up as a hybrid uh, with two barrels, so one for limited optics, and the other would be a three-gun open configuration with a single port comp. For my reviewing purposes, I really only use the compensator. It's personal preference. If it comes right down to it, I'd rather run the gun with a blower versus the restrictor plate. Is what it is. But as far as configuration is concerned, this particular example, 5-inch overall length barrel, including compensator. We have a steel frame with no rail on it. We also have a steel grip module. And you'll note the big old gas pedal on the side. Now, this particular gun comes from the same collection as the Venom custom that I reviewed. And what I like about that particular owner's guns is, one, they're all very well sorted. They're set up, they shoot excellent, but also he has a very specific style of gun that he likes. He knows what works for him. He's not apologetic about it. And though the guns tend to be a little bit heavier than my preference, I still enjoy shooting them, and it doesn't make them any less excellent. Now, on paper, looking at the configuration of this gun, the question that I think most people have is, how does it compare to Staccato XC? Well, unfortunately, in this configuration, this gun doesn't really compare to Staccato XC. With the steel grip and the gas pedal, it just isn't a very honest comparison. This gun's a lot heavier. It does shoot softer. And for recoil management purposes, it's just a quicker gun overall, as it's designed to be. Now, MPA has kind of an interesting backstory in the 2011 world, in that the initial impressions were kind of skewed by the Sage Dynamics review, where that particular gun just didn't run. The follow-up to that, of course, is the gun was sent in for service, MPA fixed the gun, and it ran just fine. So it's unfortunate that a little error that was quickly corrected really skewed people's interpretation of the quality that MPA provides. What I found with this example is at the price point, the gun's really quite phenomenal and is more than a suitable alternative to the likes of something like a Voodoo, which, though I reviewed fairly positively, now the company has seemed to have gone sideways, and I wouldn't recommend anyone send any money their way. Furthermore, looking through MPA's catalog, they have some very enticing offerings. Whether it be something like this, set up as a dual-barrel multi-use gun, something like this with an aluminum grip would be an interesting competitor against something like Staccato XC, or their open and steel challenge builds, which really appeal to me. So, with that said, let's take it over to the tabletop, get a little bit closer look at what you're getting with MPA, and we'll go from there. All right, let's get a little closer look at what you're getting with an MPA. So this is 5-inch overall length barrel, if you include the compensator. We have a titanium compensator, which is interesting because the port volume is very similar to what you get on an XC, even though it's a thread-on comp. And so it has very little threading, which I'm not sure how they've managed, because if you look at most companies, specifically Nighthawk or Atlas, they use a very large portion for threading, which either gives up port volume or leads to the gun being overly long to make up for the threading and port volume. All that to say, I really like how the compensator was executed. On the sight block version, the sight block has been finished in DLC to match the rest of the gun. Here you just have a matte titanium for the compensator. The barrel itself is finished in a gold nitride, which is slicker than snot and very well executed. The slide to frame fit is excellent with no movement in any direction. The gun is also very smooth to rack, though there's not a Marvel disconnector cut present. There is a relief cut on the edge of the stripper rail, making it very smooth to use. You can see the top of the slide has been tri-topped for weight reduction. The optic plate, I believe, is from Accuracy X, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Overall, maybe a little bit high, but it functions well and didn't cause any malfunctions like a gun you'll be seeing reviewed in the not too distant future on this channel. The dot is Vortex's Defender XL/Comp dot. This is becoming one of my favorite optics. The window is absolutely enormous. It's very clear, easy to use. The 8 MOA dot was a little large for my preference on stuff like the 5x50 drill, but overall, really like it. I'll note the serrations are also well done. I like how they're a little bit deeper towards the top of the slide, which makes over-the-top checks very easy, very comfortable. Well done. The frame is a thick, heavy steel piece, no rail cut into it. We do have drilled and tapped in case you want to run a gas pedal like so, or even a frame-mounted optic. I was going to remove the gas pedal just because I tend to prefer not to run gas pedals on my pistols. It throws me off with my regular shooting, but screws were in there and I didn't want to risk stripping them out, so gas pedal stayed on. Slide stop is another thing that I think MPA does a really good job with. Reason being, their paddle is nice and high up with a very nice ledge on it. Because the paddle is so high, even though you don't have much of a relief cut on the frame, it's still very easy to access and lock slide back. I will note, in this particular case, because of the gas pedal, the functionalness of the slide stop actually got in the way a little bit with my support hand thumb muscle. But regardless, I still really like how they execute it and was very pleased with how it functioned during live fire. A thumb safety, I'm not sure if this is an in-house part, but it's a shielded piece that's very well dehorned. There is not a hard edge to be found anywhere here. It feels very nice. Activation, solid, direct, no play. Again, usually shielded thumb safeties aren't my cup of tea. I think running it with the gas pedal and having both my thumbs kind of pushed out a little bit farther made it more comfortable overall, so it was not an issue. It is an ambi piece. Again, well done by MPA. I'm not sure who MPA sources their ignition components from. Moving on to the beaver tail, this is an extension of their grip, which they make in-house. It's nice and high, well blended, and pinned, so it's not functional as a safety. The grip module is a steel MPA piece, which I really like. Try and pick it up. You can see it has the aggressive ridges on it, but it's not an overly aggressive piece like you'd get with a Chile or PT Evo. I actually found it a very nice compromise while shooting it. Even on a very hot day where my hands were sweating quite a lot, my hands weren't slipping, but they also weren't getting shredded to bits after an hour of shooting. I've noted in the past MPA's grip module isn't my favorite. Ergonomically, it just doesn't work as well for me as some of the others. I also don't like that they leave this portion right here untextured. But understand, grip modules are very much a personal preference deal. I know other people who the MPA grip module is their absolute favorite. So, take it for what it's worth. Point being, excellent job with the grip texture on this one. The magwell is an MPA large hands piece. It's large hands because of this cutout around, which basically gives a little bit extra room for your palm, so you're not getting interfered with when gripping the gun. The opening is enormous. Works very well for reloads. This magwell does not work with the staccato over-insertion protection base pads. For the most part, I was having to run 140 millimeter magazines with flat base pads. Up to the mag catch. Sprung a little bit heavier than I see on most competition guns, but it's very smooth. It's a drilled and tapped piece without a brand label on it. And again, overall, just very nice. Moving up to the trigger. So it has an MPA shoe. I actually like how it's done. It's a little bit slick, but it's nicely rounded on the corners. This is a shorter length, similar to a Atlas or Infinity short length trigger. Overall, the trigger job is very nice. Pulls about 2 pounds. You have a short take up and a nice break. The mainspring feels a little bit light, so we're probably about a 17 pound there. Reset is direct. Nice pull, but it feels a bit more of a roll. So it's not as crisp as some of the higher end offerings, but it's a light, very usable, very accurate, quick trigger. But it does give up a little bit to the likes of something like Infinity, Atlas, McLaren, and so on. So that is the MPA.
But does it shoot? Boy, does it ever. Heavyweight with a gas pedal or not, this thing's a Cadillac.
Oh, that's nice.
The gun was fast and controlled, balanced well in the hand, even transitions pretty nicely despite its heavy weight. I have to say, I'm really becoming a big fan of the Vortex pump dot, and the Monster Magwell made reloads a breeze. The 5x50 was nothing, and the thing is an absolute demon on a plate rack.
All right, final thoughts on this gun. Overall, very impressed with this one. MPA got a lot of the little details right. It was one of the softest shooting guns I've used, very fast, especially on the plate rack, but it also highlights one of the reasons why I avoid gas pedals like the plague, and that is they work great and they're kind of a cheat code. And what winds up happening is I shoot the gun with a gas pedal, then I go back to the guns that I regularly shoot, and I don't know what to do with my hand. So, as a whole, I try and avoid the gas pedals, but admittedly, they work great. They're an excellent performance advantage, and this one was a lot of fun to use, especially paired with a steel frame and the compensator. It was just a fast gun. If I was to nitpick anything, I would say the trigger felt a little bit spongy, especially compared to the likes of the McLaren Custom or the Venom that I recently reviewed. So I felt like in my split times, the sponginess of the trigger was what was holding it back compared to those guns. But again, that's really nitpicking because overall, this actually has a very nice trigger, and I'm comparing it to guns that cost nearly twice as much as it. Ultimately, my impressions of this gun are excellent. It would probably be my recommendation in the budget competition world. Budget. And if you've been sleeping on MPA, it's at least worth checking them out, giving a closer look at what's going on in their catalog, and seeing if it might work for you. So, with that said, please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.